The International Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch has travelled to Washington. She's there at the moment in a bid to promote trade between the US and the UK.
Delivering a speech last night to the free market think tank, the Cato Institute, she said that strong trade ties could be used to challenge authoritarian regimes.
It comes ahead of an announcement by Donald Trump tonight, where he's widely predicted to announce his run for the presidency in 2024.
Well, Professor of International Relations David Dunn joins us now. Very good morning to you, Professor. Of course, the UK very keen to try and lay the groundwork and build that relationship with Washington so that a trade deal can be done. And this will obviously be important in all of that. What's your interpretation of how it's going so far?
Well, she's trying to do all the right things. She's making a major speech. She's visiting Congress and she's meeting someone from the administration. And she's making all the right noises, talking about the need to improve supply chain, energy security. And she's made this claim that the UK and the US is the most important trade relationship in the world. If that was necessarily the case right now, you would wonder perhaps that she would meet the US Secretary Treasury, Janet Yellen, rather than her deputy. You wonder also about the timing of this. I mean, she's meeting with congressional committees while they're lame duck just before they're replaced in January. And also their choice of a speak to the Cato Institute, the libertarian right-wing think tank, is one not necessarily that's the favourite of the current administration, perhaps why she ended up meeting the deputy. So if I was organising the trip, I think I would have done it slightly differently, but she's making all the right moves in trying to make those connections.
So in your opinion, they could have organised things a bit differently, but the bigger picture is that really the Northern Ireland Protocol is central to all this as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there are two fundamental problems in terms of getting a trade agreement between the US and the UK. And as you say, the most one is the fact that the Biden administration is holding back and making clear to the UK in private that actually the US is very concerned about the Northern Ireland Protocol and that UK-US relations are essentially on hold on the trade relationship until the UK stops its threat to actually end that unilaterally and come to some agreement. And then the second issue, the more fundamental one in terms of the substance of it, are that the UK doesn't want to have a free trade arrangement with the US if it means that actually the UK has to import chlorinated chicken and hormone-injected beef. And in agriculture, their agricultural production is such that it would swamp the UK market and make the UK farms unproductive. So it's difficult to see how we have a free trade agreement in that area without that doing damage to the UK farming industry, rather like actually it was suggested in Parliament that the Australian deal would do to the beef industry in the UK as well. So there are some fundamental problems there in trying to actually replace the lost trade that we've done with the EU by getting a deal with the Americans.
What do you make of this G20 bilateral between Prime Minister Sunak and President Biden tomorrow? The first time they'll have come face to face, and there was lots of, I don't know if you think it was fair speculation around the time when Prime Minister Truss was sort of snubbed a little bit around the time of the Queen's funeral, and they never managed to meet up, and there was implied criticism from the Biden administration of the trickle-down economics. Look, how is that special relationship, and how important will this bilat be between the two great countries tomorrow?
Well, I think ideologically speaking, it was very clear that from Biden's statement that Truss and him were far apart. Again, one of the reasons why I wouldn't have chosen the Cato Institute to do my speech in Washington. I think you can expect the mood music to be warmer. I think actually that Sunak has a better, more deft touch in terms of diplomacy. He's clearly made relations with France improve, and you can expect that with Biden too. But again, it's clear in terms of actually as on the US agenda, as far as we figure that the Northern Ireland Protocol is a thing which they are concerned about. The overall relationship with Europe is much more important now than it is with the UK, and the peace deal in Northern Ireland, the perpetuation of that is of utmost importance, and therefore actually getting that sorted is high on Biden's agenda, and that will figure in any mood music that there is between the two leaders.
David, just before we mention Donald Trump, sticking with these bilateral talks that happen on the sideline at the G20, there are also reports potentially that Rishi Sunak may meet with India's Prime Minister later today, and they'll be looking for signs about a trade deal there as well. Now, we've talked about a big trade deal with the US. We're talking now about a big trade deal with India. How likely do you see that progressing into something tangible?
Well, the mood music there, just to use that phrase again, is very good. The Indians love the fact that we have an Indian heritage prime minister. There's a huge amount of goodwill as a consequence of that. But the fundamentals there are that what India wants from a trade deal is access to the UK market from Indian workers. How the Conservative Party squares that in terms of actually the desire to bring net migration down is the problem there. Obviously, the UK wants to sell more whiskey without tariffs to India, but the quid pro quo for that is that actually the UK market is liberalised and open to migration, which is not yet one that I think the Conservative Party has resolved.
Sorry to labour this point, but there seems to be two similarities there between talking to the US and talking to India, which is both require trade-offs from the UK in order to get what they want, and there's an unwillingness to trade off, in other words, to sort of give away a bit of control.
Absolutely, and that's the fundamentals with trying to replace the biggest market, which has been damaged as a consequence of Brexit, with these players that are a long way away and want things that actually are difficult for the UK government to give, rather than just actually free movement of goods across the channel.
Yeah, and what you can read in between the difference between the two countries and their reception with Rishi Sunak, with President Biden mispronouncing his name, whereas Narendra Modi actually knowing the names of Sunak's daughters. That was how close that relationship was. I think read into that what you will. I just wanted one final question to you. Lots of signalling from Donald Trump that there was going to be a big announcement this evening at Mar-a-Lago. Lots of people thinking he was going to throw his hat in the ring for the next presidential election. Do you think he'll still be so keen to do that after the failure of the red tsunami last week?
I think that it's almost a bet in certainty that Trump will declare today. His prospects are slightly damaged by the events we had on Tuesday, but I think there's a number of reasons why Trump will declare. The first is that he wants to get ahead of the field. So his main rival, Ron DeSantis, has just been elected governor of Florida. He can't immediately then say, by the way, I'm not going to spend the next 2 years governing Florida. I'm going to spend the next 2 years running for president. So he has to wait. So Trump wants to get ahead of the field by declaring early and getting his position out there. He also sees it a way as making lots of money for his various dubious organizations. Trump has actually benefited financially hugely by raising money for his causes, that means him, over the last few years, and he will continue to do the same thing. He also sees it as a way of actually avoiding the 6 legal claims that are being carried against him, prosecutions have been carried against him, and he thinks that actually by declaring himself to be a candidate, that he will be part of the political process, and therefore the Department of Justice will be less likely to come after him in those legal cases. The 6th of January assault on the Capitol, there's attempt to swing the election in Georgia, and various the chewing up and flushing away and hiding of documents. All of those things are potentially ones that could come after him, and Trump thinks that by being a candidate he'll avoid those. And the last thing is, the man has an enormous ego. He is a narcissist. He loves the attention. And actually, to be back in the news and to be the subject of GBNews' morning programme is exactly what fuels his ego.
Yeah,
so I think he will run. Whether he gets the nomination is less certain, although he has a huge amount of base. And whether he wins depends who goes up against. As you said, Biden can't remember people's names, and he's old and tired, and whether he can campaign or not is another matter. So if it's Trump-Biden, much closer. If there's a generational change in the Democratic Party side, and they choose someone with more vigour and actually just a new figure who hasn't got the baggage of the last 2 years of Afghanistan and the economy and everything else, then I think the prospects are very different. But if it's Trump-Biden, then I'm not betting any money at all, I'm afraid.
Yeah. David, really good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you, David Dunn, Professor of International Relations at the University of Birmingham. It's going to be fascinating to see what that announcement is. It probably is going to be around. It is,
isn't it? We'll be talking about this tomorrow morning.
We're going to hear lots more nicknames like Ron de Sanctimonious.
Yeah, exactly.